Next question will go to Kelly Ayotte. You'll have 2 minutes to respond, and Charlie will be asking the question.
Hi. In September of 2008, John McCain, the GOP nominee, suspended his campaign, and he and his counterpart both issued press statements supporting the first TARP program. The Republican House, the House largely on the basis of Republican votes, initially rejected it, and it was resurrected largely through the efforts of Judd Gregg in the United States Senate. Do you think that the House was right to reject it, or Senator Gregg was right to want it? And in Washington, how will you distinguish between good bailouts and bad bailouts?
Well, thank you for the question, Charlie. I have tremendous respect for Senator Gregg, but I disagree with him on the bailout that was done. And I agreed with the House position on that. I don't think that our government should be in a position of picking the winners and the losers in the private sector. And so fundamentally, we shouldn't have picked the winners and the losers on the banks in terms of bailing out the banks. I wouldn't have agreed with bailing out the insurance companies or the auto companies as well. And unfortunately, now there's a discussion about bailing out private pension funds. So fundamentally, I'm against bailouts. I will not support them as a United States Senator. I think that we have to allow the private sector to work itself out, and that sometimes that means that people will fail, but that's what it means to go out and start a business, and you have to have accountability. You should be able to get the incentives for your hard work, and that's why I certainly don't support the tax increases that are coming in January, but also you need to be accountable for your failures, and that's the position I would take as a United States Senator.
Thank you, Kelly. Ovid, 1 minute.
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Chris. Clearly, the federal government does not have a role to bail out a private sector industry, group, or company. That's not the role of the federal government. TARP was wrong, as were some of these other bailout initiatives. There is a role, by the way, for government in commerce, and that's to set forth the rules of engagement. That is, the laws that enforce contracts between people. And there's also a role for government when things fail, when companies fail. It's called bankruptcy. And that is the ordinary place where you would go for any company that's having trouble, that needs to reorganize itself. And we've allowed people and entities to escape the consequences of bad decisions, of bad strategies. And in the case of the TARP program, probably the worst thing that happened in the bill was this sort of final clause that gave carte blanche authority to the government to use the money that was appropriated, which is why the President and the Congress now is looking to try to take that money and use it for another purpose, other than reducing the debt, which it should be doing.
Thank you, Ovid. Bill? I'm sorry, Jim? You have 1 minute.
Okay. You know, it may have seemed like the right thing to do at the time, but the long-term consequences of doing it were far greater than the short-term would have been to not have done it. We're built on a society that's founded on capitalism and liberty, and if there are no consequences for failure, then we should get used to seeing lots more failures. People will take unnecessary risks, businesses will take unnecessary risks because they'll say, what the heck? The government's going to bail us out. We do need to have a process of cleansing, and that's what the bankruptcy laws are for. And that's what should have happened, is we should have let the free market system work itself out. Nobody is too big to fail in our country, and it's not like these jobs would have gone away. These businesses would have been restructured, and they would have gone on. So it was wrong to do this. It was a mistake, and I want to make sure, if I'm elected to the Senate, that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Jim. Bill, you have 1 minute to answer.
I would not have supported either bailout. It began the slippery slope of where we are today. At the time of the first bailout, we had 7% unemployment. We've spent $1 trillion+ in these various bailouts, and today we have almost 10% unemployment. We have a larger deficit and more debt on our books today than ever before. The people in Washington, simply stated, are incompetent, however well-intentioned Judd Gregg was when he voted for it. I didn't agree with it then, and I don't agree with it now. What we need to do is, I agree with my colleagues up here, let the bankruptcy code work its magic, such as it is and as painful as it is, and restructure these entities so that they do work. We are a successful economy because we move along, and the things that are not productive go away, and the things that are newly productive emerge. And just as we need a spring and a summer and a fall, we need a winter. And I think that these banks that failed, in some cases, they needed to fail. They were doing the wrong loans, they were engaging in the wrong processes, and they shouldn't do it. So just as BP has a price to pay, the banks had a price to pay, and we should never have engaged in the bailouts.
Thank you very much, Bill.